character creation panel. The only not 18 plus panel going on right now. Woot woot.
I was personally offended that Cards Against Humanity was 18 plus.
It's like, come on.
I feel like we should be able to get a waiver sign that says for
Yeah.
parents that like my son/daughter can handle this.
We've played Cards Against Humanity before. It's okay. We know we're horrible humans. It's basically a contest to see who's the worst. Alright, so jumping right in, I guess. The different character structures that I've set up here, fairly commonly used. I grab them because they're easy to understand. Of course, there are there's a bunch of different ways to look at character dynamic and structure. This is just the simplest for me for both character type and plot connection. So going through the 4 different ones, there's simple, complex, static, and dynamic. I grabbed examples I thought would be most recognizable. Hopefully that worked out for me. If you haven't seen
I've
or
fortunately seen
perceived,
all of these.
we're friends. It's that easy. Yes.
I haven't watched Yuri on Ice yet.
Yet. This is something that happens to me a lot also. I'm like, I haven't played that game. Yet. And they're like, came out in 2013. I'm like, yet! That's how it comes back. It's on my shelf! And everyone's like, okay. Take it.
It's on the list.
It's right
It's a
there.
very long list.
Does anyone need a summary of the general types before we get started, or is that's good? Okay. So, general summary of each one. Usually they're opposites. Simple is considered an opposite of complex. Usually complex, of course, having a lot of elements required to understand, which I will go into more depth once I hit that slide. Static and dynamic, simple versions of that being static character is unchanging, dynamic character will change throughout the plot. So these are opposites and these are opposites. You wouldn't have a simple complex character or a static dynamic character. You would have a static complex, dynamic complex, dynamic simple, static simple. They'll interchange this way, but not this way. Very technical terms. Anyway.
Well, yeah. Ike's not completely static, but yeah, I get you.
No, and I'm picking the sequel for Ike, Radiant
like the
Dawn versus Path of
axiomatic
Yeah,
Radiance.
because he doesn't get
Just-
that much at all.
Yeah, if you're a Path of Radiance Ike, you're like, that's his dynamic change, that's his prequel. But you were saying something.
It's like D&D.
Yeah.
Lawful versus chaotic.
Yeah.
Good versus evil. Would
Yeah.
simple be evil?
It depends.
Because I
You
mean,
could have
lawful
simple
versus
good,
chaotic
simple
would be
evil.
static versus dynamic, and presumably complex is good.
Or it could be evil. Because you always have villains with good publicity. Where it's complicated because they're like, the king? And everyone loves them. And everyone thinks you're a giant douche for trying to throw them over. You're like, no, seriously, they killed lots of people. Like, yeah, we didn't like them anyway. Alright. Little quibble, but alright. So, first structure, simple character. I picked everyone's favorite.
Hey!
Hey!
Listen!
You're like, no.
Watch out!
Wait, listen!
Well, I would be watching if I wasn't listening.
And then
You should know that I can only handle one task at a time.
and then there's Tattle, who no one remembers, but was so much better.
I love
Yeah.
I love those two.
It's the little bell chime is nice.
Just like
Tattle and
that!
Tail.
Perfect, thank you.
Tattle and Tail are my little babes.
I know, they're precious. I love them.
Majora's Mask was better than Ocarina of Time.
True.
I can't pick between any game except for Hero of Trains, anyway.
Train Simulator Zelda
I
Edition.
hate that game. Feelings, personal feelings, hate that game. Take anything
I
over
think
that.
most people hate that game.
Just in case there are some that don't, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I just hate it.
Just you.
Preference. It's fine. But for a simple character, the main key points being they are memorable and they are effective. The thing with a simple character is they're usually a very excellent reference point. You see Navi, or Tattle, fairies in general, you know that Link is nearby in this game's system. It's a reference point. There you're in. The audience's connection for knowing someone else is there. A similar parallel would be seeing a dire wolf in Game of Thrones. You know, one of these people whose life is probably not long is nearby. Dire wolf, the North, there's that connection. Anyone in the Stark family, you generally think of them when you see a dire wolf. There's your reference point, you're in. That's your simple character. There's not a lot of development, but there is some, and it's more so that they are iconic of whoever they're near. Or that could be geographic, that could be people, that could be general causes. That's where your memorable characters are going to be most effective. Your simple characters are that in. And in that sense, they're very effective plot-wise. For the case of character role, Navi is your targeting system. She tells you different tips, usually when you don't want them. You're like, no, I'm trying to dodge. Okay, I guess I'm dead. That's fine. But they have that character role. They have a function that they serve in that particular medium. A book is obviously going to be different. You would need a targeting system in a book, hopefully. But you would have someone who's your healer or the same type of your reference point, so they're your person who would give you the information ideally when you needed it. So you're saying like, okay, I don't know what this giant machine is, how do I handle it, what do I do next? You have that person who has that character role of being the person to tell you. They might have a simple level of development and be indicative of the group that you're with. So if you're a secret agent, that's your cue, basically. They're going to be back at base for you. And they can have dynamic elements. So someone like Navi, who started off the game basically trashing Link and being like, oh, you're lazy, you're sleeping in all the time, I can't believe I'm stuck with you. By the end of the game is like, you have grown so much, you've done so many things, you don't need me anymore. But I was happy to be part of your journey. So she has changed by traveling with Link. And the reason that's actually important is that Link can't duck. So all of his changes are shown through Navi and her speech at the end of the game. So that's her character role, her dynamic element as a simple character is to show you the ways in which Link has changed. So she did serve her plot functions and her actual in-game functions of being a nuisance, but at actually showing Link's character development on his behalf was a like a story function that she served, not just a gameplay function. So effective for what they can do, and they can hold multiple tasks even if they're simple characters. So that kind of structure, just because a character is simple, doesn't mean they only do one thing. Questions before we move on? That one's tired. I understand. That one.
The one with the red hair.
Yeah, that's the most iconic thing. Clearly, not the blue skin. That's normal.
I can't see the blue skin. Okay, there we go.
There you go. Looks good though. So for contrast, a complex character, being the opposite of a simple character, of course, is going to have multiple traits. They are dimensional, they are distinctive. Instead of being indicative of someone else or something else, they stand out all on their own. So that's their distinction. The different dimensions being having a lot of different personality traits, usually ones that contradict one another. So you've got someone who's a huge jerk, like 95% of the time, and they're like saving kittens, starting charities, guiding children to their homes. You're like, what? What is happening? I don't understand you. But I accept this mainly because I have no choice. There's your multiple traits of, they don't necessarily make sense together, but they're complicated characters. They're going to have those kinds of situations and struggles where they do things that don't make logical sense, but they make emotional, personal sense. Someone who's standoffish and aggressive and generally mean could also be extremely compassionate to those in trouble because they've been that person, that's why they're standoffish and mean. So you can make that argument, even as these traits contradict one another, it makes personal sense. That's the surprise inside that usually appeals to me, is I love gruff people who are also nice and hate themselves for being nice. I love that. Now, for Crow specifically, that's generally how he is. He's a very deeply loyal, nurturing person, but he will also give sass to the person in charge of him. So he listens to, why can't I remember there right now? Just cookies? That's what we're gonna come up with, right? Cookies? Osmond! He will listen to Osmond, but he's not afraid to give him attitude, not afraid to say, that's a dumb idea.
I'm not afraid to disagree.
Not afraid to disagree. But he'll still listen, he'll still follow, even if you don't end up listening to him. You don't do what he thinks is right, he will still follow you, he will still help you. that's how he is. Still deeply loyal, a nurturing person who will look after his family. From the very first moment you meet Crow, he is drunk. He is picking a fight with another hunter, a huntress, on the campus where hunters and huntresses are trained. So setting a horrible example in front of all of these children. Horrible. One of them is his niece. He's like, yes, executive decision making is firing on all pistons. Let's do this. And I'm like,
The fight scene was great though.
the fight scene was awesome and it was beautiful. And of course the other huntress is like super
mean-
responsible, so he just
I
like
mean-
pulls her down his nose.
It's Ruby, so that's kind of a given.
I mean, that's a
The
given.
fight scene's gonna be pretty.
They have to be. It's important. But immediately after that fight of him being irresponsible, getting someone else who's usually responsible in trouble, and generally just causing a ruckus, that's when Ruby walks up and is just like, Uncle Crow! And he's like, hey! And you're like, you were literally just being a horrible example and a monstrous person, and now you're like, I'm in uncle mode, it's too late, I'm cute. You're like, alright, you be adorable, I guess.
Crow hashtag best boy.
Best boy. So the moment you see him, he shows you those contradictions right there. Some characters wait longer to have that surprise inside. Think of like Homura from Adobe Magica. If you haven't seen it, do it. Don't be like me, don't stall. So Homura is one of those characters too that you're gonna see later on, way later on, and they're not half as bad as you think they are. Whereas he shows you in the very first episode that he shows up. So they'll have that surprise inside. Timing is all up to that plot line of how much you want to show and how soon. Because if you knew Homura from the beginning, you'd be like, alright, that's it, that's the season, bye, that's the whole show. See you later. Everybody get out. One episode. So, whereas it wasn't plot relevant with Crow. So they could get away with that. Now, as far as being distinct and standing out, for characters like this, Crow you don't see too often. You spot him among other hunters and huntresses fairly easily because most hunters and huntresses are respectful and will toe the line and follow rules. They're champions, they uphold peace and all of those delightful heroic things. Whereas he's always pushing rules and boundaries and is various questionable levels of sober
At all times.
at all times. You're like, you could be stone cold sober or hammered right now, and I really can't tell. I don't know with you. That could be water, that could be something else. So, just in his practices, how he conducts himself, he is different. But that kind of character asks a lot of your audience because they contradict the things they've come to expect of that archetype, of that particular group. So as a hunter, you expect certain things, and he doesn't hit most of those markers. Only occasionally does he hit respectful and heroic. Sometimes, not always.
I mean, once you get later on, the heroic thing is a bit more prevalent.
It's a bit more prominent, yes, once you hit later on. Because he is a hunter, ultimately. He's going to do good things.
No, but I mean specifically with the semblance and such.
Of course. And the semblance does make more sense once you get to that point, but I don't want to spoil anyone who is a staller, procrastinator like me. Be careful with your letters, children. Staller becomes stalker, and it's very bad.
Is consensual stalking a thing?
I believe
Let's not
that's
ask this
following.
question
I believe
here.
that's guiding. I believe that's guiding and following. One of my favorites is someone's like, it was an honest mistake. I'm like, as opposed to a dishonest mistake? That's sabotage. That's no, you don't have to distinguish honest anyway. So, potentially, but there's probably a word for it. But a character like this will ask a lot, so if you load up a plot with like a bunch of complex characters, you're going to have to pace things and you're going to have to pace things a lot better and very carefully because a lot of complex characters will load up that scene.
About the bird thing, they're actually the bird that has like a nest that's like right near one of the outside air vents.
Oh,
So that's why you hear that, because there's a bird out that way that you can hear from almost all around this place because of air vents.
perfect. And now we know.
It's not a bird.
It's not a bird?
No,
It's
not
my
a bird.
cousin. She has Tourette's.
Oh, I thought it was a bird this whole time.
It's not.
Like, there was a bird that I saw the first day that made a very similar noise that had its nest by an air vent. So I just thought it was that bird.
Oh, well,
She's great though, so don't
Puzzle solved?
Don't get bothered. She's great.
well. I mean, sounding like a bird doesn't set you off the record as being great. You could probably still be great. I'm so tactful, we don't even know. Continuing on the things I'm good at. Oops. Getting back on course. When you have complex characters, a lot of the panels that have run, a lot of the workshops that I've been in, a lot of people just assumed complex is inherently better than simple. You have simple characters because you didn't write them well. And I'm like, no, it's just a matter of central focus or not central focus. A complex character is usually very close to the central focus, if not in it, and there are not going to be a lot of them, usually, because if you have a lot of complex characters, it's demanding on you, it's demanding on your audience, they're hard to pull off, and you have to drop a lot of cues and clues for people to be able to fully understand a complex character, because if you don't explain things like semblances, if you don't explain things about a character, your audience is going to lose certain elements of them and misinterpret them, which you want to do on purpose, not by accident. So, complex characters can be extremely difficult. I've certainly seen people who make giant, sprawling casts of complex characters, George R.R. Martin, and they do just fine. But it's not something that everyone can just sort of be like, yes, I'll just do this right away. It's a challenge and it's difficult. Not impossible, but it's hard. So if you do it, be aware that if you're going to hit hurdles, it's fine. It's going to happen and you'll find your way around it. It's just going to take longer, takes more work. Oh wait, any questions on complex characters before I decide you don't have any? I was right, I'm a prophet. Clearly what that means. So on the subject of static characters, their main features are grounding, and they have that multifunction as well. The thing with a static character is they are another example of a reference point, but they also are stabilizing. So when you have plots that are changing, your dynamic characters are changing, and everything is all up in the air, you have a static, grounded character who's going to give that level approach to your audience. When everything else is in flux, this character's reliable, this character's the same. They're the calm in the eye of the storm. It is possible to overwhelm an audience with too much change and too much going on. A static character is extremely handy for not only keeping your cast on track, but your audience as well. I say cast because it's easier characters. So for as an example, with Ike, when he's in Path of Radiance, obviously, he is dynamic, he's younger, it's the prequel. You get the sequel, Radiant Dawn, he's gone through his changes in his developments. When those main characters come back for Radiant Dawn and they start questioning things, he's giving rallying speeches instead of having speeches given to him. Because he's now in that position that he can say, I've already gone through this, I've gone through what you're going through. I can say, we have to do this, we have to stay on task. I know it's hard right now, but heroism and friendship and peace, etc.
Would Jack Sparrow be a static character?
I would say definitely complex. I would say he's static because in the movies he's already gone through a lot of the developments that make him seem dynamic. He's unpredictable.
Yeah.
Which makes it feel like he's dynamic, but he's reliably unpredictable. He's always going to be that way. He's gotten that way because of past experience. I would say he's static, in my opinion. But I also read the books because I'm a huge Jack Sparrow nerd. So, any other questions before I keep going? Okay. So, stabilizing point, heroism, friendship, etc. Like, that's where I left off. Now, the multifunction of a static character is simple or complex. They do have that benefit of being able to be one or the other, as I had touched on earlier. A simple static character is usually something like a sidekick or something to that effect, someone who's not going to be terribly plot relevant. They're doing a certain function. They have a role to fill, but they don't actually change over that course. They're particularly useful for, again, keeping characters on track of having a friend who doesn't change, who isn't affected by the things they're affected by. Of course, it depends on the protagonist, because sometimes the protagonist needs someone who understands better, whereas other times the protagonist needs someone who wasn't marred by their experiences to remind them that there is a purer world. So it depends a lot on what you're going on with your story and your protagonist, the settings that you're in, whether you would want a simple or complex static character. For example, with a complex static character, that's more someone who's going to pull more weight in a plot. Someone like Ike, who by the sequel is complex, but static. So he's able to be a support to the other protagonists who are going through their struggles a lot more intensely than he is. He can keep them from faltering. and you can see that struggle and expose the struggle of the protagonist through him as a complex static character. So, Micaiah having questions on whether or not she can lead an army, things of that nature. People who are questioning whether or not the world is worth saving. He's like, well, there's 10 of us, so unless you want to have no friends. No, that wasn't his counter-argument. That would be my counter-argument.
I fight for my friend.
I fight for my friends. And you're like, okay, Fire Emblem Sora.
I never thought of him like that, but now that you say that.
Simple, kind of slow, but heroic, and really charming in his own way. Same thing. No, Jackie. That's my name, spoiler alert. Oh no.
Ruined. I
Oh,
thought
no,
you were
Jack.
Jasper.
What, yeah, I was Jasper this whole time.
You know, secrets. Oops.
It's not like we have them.
No one has those.
We're just complex, we're all simple characters.
We're all simple static characters. Nothing's happening.
So whatever's going on out there.
Extreme geek, 18 plus.
I know.
18 plus.
It's heck.
Non-stop running.
Bad words. That's all I got. So, any questions on a static character before I mosey on? So this is a word that 21st century people use, right?
Oh, what was that? I was just asking what you said, like, after you asked, like, questions.
Oh, I was like, any questions before I mosey on? And then I was like, mosey is a word that people use in the 21st century, correct? Maybe?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I use it.
Definitely.
Okay, there you go. I never know. I say a lot of old tiny stuff. I guess I'm old.
Whippersnapper?
Whippersnapper. Can't wait to be the most like hip and hap and old person because I'm a lame
Bamboozle.
young person. So I'm just assuming that I'll just swap over. Anywho, dynamic characters. Their main traits being connected and redefining. When I say connected, I mean they're usually connected, of course, generally being dynamic, they are connected to the plot very heavily. Because in effective stories, you'll generally notice that when there's an arc changing, there's a character who's changing and developing with that arc, reinforcing the themes set up by the plot. So if the plot is centered around choice, you're going to have a character who has to make choices. You need someone to reflect that, what their choices are and how they've shaped them. Something like, I don't know if any of you have played BioShock, but that would be an example of the choices you as a player have made were reinforced by the choices you had to make in the plot, although you don't usually know toward the very end of BioShock that you've basically been tested on these choices all along. Characters generally develop along with the plot. A dynamic character is one who's going to stay very close to it to help give a more complete sense of a story. In my experience with most effective stories, you have a character or multiple characters who develop along with the themes that you're trying to reinforce in the plot. So, growth with the plot. And generally they have to be lovable or relatable, because you don't care about someone, then you're not going to care about the changes that are happening to a dynamic character, because you didn't like them in the first place. And I say lovable / relatable because you don't have to like them.
Okay, there we go. Because, like, there's many times where you have a character who starts out as a really bad person who develops into a good guy.
Or, my personal favorite, really bad person who stays kind of a garbage person, but they're sort of your friend now.
Nasala, as a good example.
Nacella's a great example. He's like, don't trust me! And they're like, I trust you, buddy! And he's like,
He's like, I have a contract, I can't do this!
spoilers! It's a really old game. If you haven't played it, it's totally your fault.
I like the Steven Universe example with Peridot. Like, she
Yes.
becomes their friend, but she's still the great Peridot, leader of the Crystal Gems.
You're like, okay, Paradigm, you do you. The actual trope name for it is your token evil teammate, who you generally, like, you look over at them, and if you're making a decision, and you've got friends who are going, the one that's going, is the one you're like, oh god, I'm a horrible person! Like, that's your token evil teammate. If you play Dragon Age, that's Morgan, because you're like, alright, this person's not listening to me, I've tried bribing them, I've tried playing nice with them, now I'm gonna threaten them. Morgan's like, I'm in! Like, that's your token evil teammate, where they're like, we're threatening political figures, let's do it!
I feel like that's my friend in, like, every single Dungeons & Dragons campaign. I wonder which one it is.
I can tell when I made a bad decision based on how happy you are. Like, that's your token evil teammate. That's my personal favorite. The one who's on your side, but you're not 100% sure why. So,
Why are you here again?
lovable / relatable for that reason. You can relate to them, that makes you
Well, if the
uncomfortable.
world gets destroyed, there's nothing to rule.
Fair.
There. Fair enough. But that's where I make that distinction of you don't have to love them so much as you have to be able to connect to them and empathize with them. Even if it also makes you feel a little gross. You're like, ew, I like you, what's wrong with me? Ew, I understand you. I shouldn't see a therapist. That kind of concept. And of course, the example I grabbed was one of my personal favorites is Yuri Katsuki from Yuri on Ice, of you see his development from having very, very low self-confidence to having that build up and grow over the course of the plot, with other characters who are also having their own struggles, reinforcing Yuri's struggle, which is the plot line. So, watching him grow alongside other people, you are connected to him. He's definitely a lovable character. If you don't love Yuri, I'm worried for you. You don't like kittens or puppies either, I take it. Like, that's Yuri. He's the kind of character that is designed to be lovable, so you can connect to him and be proud of him as he grows, and in a weird way you relate to him as well, so that when you're in similar situations, you can remember to be proud of yourself. It's the kind of character that he is. Hence the changes in view and thought-provoking, that redefining kind of characteristic of it affects the way you actually see things in your own life. Other people who remind you of Yuri, yourself being reminded of Yuri, that kind of situation. This character is someone who, without you noticing, affects the way you think in real life. And they're extremely effective for that kind of thing, a lot more effective than just using plot to do that. And I've had a lot of people in my workshops that I've been in, I didn't always run them, but I've been in workshops and I've been to other panels where a lot of people have a social agenda or a moral lesson they want to teach in their story, but they don't want to come on too strong with it. Having a dynamic character is an extremely effective way to do it. So, whatever topic you're trying to address. In the case of Yuri Katsuki, a lot of the community that I am in generally addresses him as having an anxiety disorder. So his ability to cope with anxiety attacks and the people around him coping with those anxiety attacks affects the way that people outside of it would approach people in their lives with anxiety. Or if the person themselves has anxiety, it gives them more of an idea of what it's like to be someone who's dealing with someone who has anxiety. Rather than having the story, I mean, it's a sports anime, it's about ice skating, but you can address something like having an anxiety disorder through having your main dynamic character have an anxiety disorder, and have someone understand that better through having this character go through that in the plot line as well, hence changing the way someone views something outside in their real life. So it's a lot more effective than just like getting up on your soapbox and being like, treat people with anxiety better. They're like, what does that mean? I don't understand the concept because you didn't show me. You're just yelling it really loud. Dickens. Charles Dickens is horrible for this. He's like, be nice to poor people. I'm not going to be specific, just be nice. I'm like, I mean, yes, but...
Unrelated note, now I just have an image of Charles Dickens kicking down people's doors just, hey, are you being nice to poor people?
Basically, his stories in a nutshell. That man believed in spontaneous combustion if you were a bad enough person. I don't trust his judgment.
That happens to everyone all the
Well,
time.
It happens
There's
to me on
no
occasion.
such
Just knock
thing
yourself
as
out.
spontaneous combustion. If you suddenly burst into flames, somebody wanted you to.
This is fairly true. I should probably consult my friends.
Magic the Gathering is fun.
To see which one of them is probably posting on fire. This explains a lot about some of my friends who make most of their friends by being threatened. I'm worried about him. But general concept, getting back on track, I'm so good at this. Any questions on these things that I've covered thus far?
Do you need to figure out if a character's dynamic or static before you start writing?
You can try, but they don't always listen. Characters are a little bit like cats. You're like, you're static, you're totes static. Fine, change, whatever. I was expecting that. No, let me just redo all this plot. Jerk. So, you can start off thinking someone is static and then discover their dynamic. Don't worry about it, it happens, especially with your secretive cagey characters like Crow.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, yeah, I'm totes static, nothing's happening. And just like push their luggage under their bed and you're like, I can see it. It's sticking out still. But alright. So it happens, sometimes a character will start dynamic and you find out they're static, or vice versa. Same thing with simple or complex. None yet, but soon I shall confuse you.
Everyone's confused.
Speaking of going out of order and being confusing, I covered this in the beginning. So, yes, you can mix and match, obviously. You have your diagram here for helpfulness. I'll be uploading this to my Facebook page later, and probably sharing it to the PortCon page if I have enough brain cells to do that at that time. Due to being unconscious, maybe not. But I will have this as an option online somewhere. Find me, good luck. For if you ever need to consult this chart later. Moving on. Creation process. Now this is something I actually have to give credit to Artist Highwind of Gaia Online. Don't know if they've changed their username or if they're still there or if this website is still active. But doing my very best to cite those sources. These are the simplest structures that I've seen thus far for character creation. I'm sure that there are things that have been updated since, but I find this to be the easiest for me. So top down being basic details first, background second. So this is a very intuitive process, and I, being an intuitive writer, will generally use something like this, where you start with something like an unwavering aspect, something that's not going to change. They're a soldier, they're an engineer, they're from a poor family, they're from a wealthy family, something of that nature that is a solid part of them that you can build around. Hence, you get the background second. You start with, they're a soldier. How did they get to be a soldier? It's your thing to start out from, top down. The thing that you would notice first. Then you move on to other things. How does one become a soldier? They either enlist, or they're drafted, or they're pressed into service. Those would be your options, and then you ask yourself, which one of these? Were they pressed into service? That means they didn't want to be here. Why are they still here? And it'll domino effect until you have enough of a character built up that you can then develop past that point with the plot. Versus bottom up, which usually feels more interconnected because you start with their background first and you incorporate other elements as you go. From out of the gate, usually by the time you hit the end of the story, it will feel more interconnected than top down, but it depends on what structure you're using with what character and your own personal writing style. Neither one of these is better or worse than the other. It's just a matter of what's easier for you. If you're having a hard time getting a hold of a character, top down is usually pretty easy because it has that domino effect of, I know this, how did that happen? How did that happen? How did that happen? Now I have enough about you that I can go from there. Versus bottom up is, what's your background, what's your story first, and then I understand the effects of that story based on your choices. So instead of saying you're a soldier, how did that happen? You were pressed into service, why are you still here? Because you ended up being loyal anyway, or because you're afraid you'll be killed if you leave, or they're holding your family hostage, or something of that effect, versus vice versa. You come forward from, you grew up in a farming family, someone pressed your family into service, and you're loyal to them because they have your family also in service. If you have a character that's giving you a hard time, giving you